Limerence is an obsession or infatuation with someone who can't be with you, either because of life circumstances or because the person doesn't exist, or they don't know you, or because they know you, but they don't feel that way about you. Now, limerence is common for people who grew up emotionally neglected. And because you can never recapture the love you were supposed to get as a child, it can be hard to wake up out of the delusion that if only some person you used to know would come back in your life, it would be so wonderful. That it would be worth all the things in your real life that would be destroyed if you did that. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Lisa, and she writes, "Hi, Anna. I came from a childhood background plagued with neglect, narcissistic emotional abuse, and abandonment. To this day, I don't share a relationship with my parents as a means of protecting myself from cycles of abuse." Okay, I've got my fairy pencil here. I'm going to circle some things I want to come back to in a second reading, but let's go through and read the letter here and see what you've got, Lisa. All right. "There was always this deep longing inside me to be loved, valued, and wanted by them. I experienced my first love at the age of 15. I believe what we shared in time was genuine, but the perception of such was tainted by my traumatized disposition. We were very similar and shared similar struggles. We created a safe space for each other that I didn't have at home or with any of my other friends. When we broke up, something he did to protect me, the friendship ended too, and just like that, he was gone off to the military. I was overtaken by the grief of the abandonment and the difficulty of living in survival mode. I was poor. I didn't have that safe space with him in real life any longer, so I created it in my head. I created a reality where we would be together again, and that hope is what I used to survive those years of depression. He was my daily meditation. Once I graduated and became an adult and finally felt like I could come up for air, I no longer needed to rely on this fantasy, and so I was able to let it go, along with the vision of us being together. I didn't deny my feelings for him, but I understood there was a difference between what I felt and wanted and what was reality and what was needed. As the years went by, we reconnected and remained in touch occasionally. I was thoroughly convinced I was finally free of those emotions. That is, until I got married and I began to have what started off as random dreams of my ex. I was disgusted by this and wholeheartedly resisted and resented the dreams, and this would continue frequently over the next 7 years. Once my marriage began to hit a rough patch, the dreams became intertwined with my real-life emotions. Whereas I used to resist them, I began looking forward to the escape and the moment to relive the experiences I shared with him. At this point in my life, I felt lost in my marriage, and there was this desire to relive the past and recapture the old me. Once the dreams became my actual thoughts, I slowly drifted into living a double life. It wasn't just the thought or the fantasy, it became what I wanted. I wasn't present in my marriage, and this became evident to my husband, who I tried to be honest and open with. He struggled to love me the way I needed and to be loved, and this added to my flight or escape response. I'm finally at a place where I'm seeking help because I cannot continue to live this double life any longer. I am happy that I am aware of what the problems are, and that's powerful. It's sheer torment, especially when both sides are so opposed to one another. One side knows that I have a great husband and family and that there's nothing in the past for me. And the other says, run, be alone, and get the love you want from the man you know can give it to you. All this confusion stemming from the reality that deep down, what I actually need is to be embraced by my parents. So my questions are, 1, have you encountered individuals who experience limerent dreaming, if that's even a thing? 2, how do I separate grief from limerence, as they both could look the same? I'm in real life grieving the loss of our friendship after 15 years, while in dreams limerence grieving the loss of the love. Wait, how do I separate grief from limerence, as both could look the same? How do I cope with this void of love in my life if I let go of the fantasy completely? I truly appreciate the work you do and taking the time to read and respond to emails. All right, and that's from Lisa. Okay, Lisa, I got you. So this is not uncommon. This is a pretty normal way that limerence goes. And it's also not uncommon that being in a marriage kicks up old old hurts, old wounds. So you getting married and having your husband activating these limerent feelings sounds pretty normal to me. But what I want to tell you is this is limerence. This is just a classic case. So you were 15 when you met this guy and it ended, and it was this positive thing, but you got into the habit, you taught yourself to use the memory of him as a drug. And the memory of him, when we use memories as a drug, they have to be amplified and streamlined and the icky parts removed and all the idiotic things that other people say and the dirt they leave on the floor and all the problems and misunderstandings and the way they don't care about what you just said, like all of that, all the fear and resentment of the relationship is removed from a fantasy. Now, in a real relationship, which you have with your husband, there are disappointments. There are just ways that it seems very not colorful, not 3D. You don't really understand me. And I know that different people understand us on different levels. There are a few people in the world who get us, all right? And hopefully you have married somebody who gets you. Not everybody has that. You don't have to have that, but feeling like somebody gets you and you get each other is one of the great treats of life. And usually most of those people are going to be your friends. It sounds like you had it in this high school guy that you went out with. So when you're 15, and especially in this horrible way that you grew up, all your emotional needs got poured into him. Then when he was gone, you were free to create this fantasy version of him. And what's happened, it's interesting because your last question for me is, how do I cope with this void of love in my life if I give up the fantasy? It's like the void of love is the fantasy. Fantasy is not love. Love is something that is given by people in real life. And that's the great delusion of love. That this big idea of the great thing, that life cannot be full without that. I think that limerent ideas of somebody, they can be uplifting in the way that maybe a great piece of music is uplifting, but it doesn't keep you warm at night. It doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't become the person who is your very best friend who walks through the hard things and the good things with you. So you don't have a void of love in your life. You have a void of love in your heart because the fantasy has just taken over a bunch of space. So if you're willing, see if you can allow yourself to release the fantasy. And it functions like an addiction. It's not love. I just want to say that again. Fantasy is not love. Limerence is not love. It's like love. It takes the place of love. It's a fantasy of having love, but it is not love. Real love requires that people are actually present, that they actually are there and love you. That's what a romance is. That's what a romance is. So a little thought that I wanted to give is you may be thinking you want to contact him. You didn't mention whether you know what his disposition is right now, but I'm going to urge you, do not contact him. For all you know, he's in a marriage or relationship and your presence is going to create great disruption. And that's the best case scenario in terms of him actually having feelings for you. Even if he doesn't have feelings for you, it will be very upsetting. And the best thing that you can do if you love someone is to not interfere with their relationships by your existence. Okay? I know that's radical. I know that's not what you learn in movies and TV, but it is the right thing to do. To be a good person, you must not interfere with other people's relationships. They're innocently going on with their lives. They're making the best of it. They have their struggles. They don't need somebody who has a huge fantasy attached to this man coming in and creating jealousy, worry, trouble. And it is trouble. And I will tell you that when people who are limerent disclose their feelings, I've heard of one case where it worked out and somebody was like, actually, I feel that way about you. But you are married. You have somebody who you've made a promise to. And I understand if it's not the most exciting thing for you every day and that a fantasy is the most exciting thing. But that's what you said. You used it when you were depressed. You used it when you felt lost. You wanted to recapture the past. But okay, here's the thing. No one can recapture the past. There's no such thing. We have memories is what we have. Your memories are yours. You can privately think about them. But if you really, really would like to stop being limerent on this guy from the past, this is what I'm going to suggest you do. That you need a practice to process your feelings. And for you, that might be therapy. It might be group therapy. It might be a 12-step program. You'd certainly be welcome in my membership program where people work on issues like this. And you'd find other women who have made tremendous progress renouncing their limerence and coming to the real world. All love, all excitement, all beauty, all real things. They're in the real world. By the way, you asked about limerent dreams. Yes, there are limerent dreams. It's in there. The fantasy is certainly in your consciousness, and it's going to come out in dreams and thoughts and memories, and that's okay. It's all normal. You don't have to give it heavy meaning or anything. You are a person who was traumatized as a kid. You didn't get loved properly. You were abused. You learned to manufacture love where there was a void of love. And that's what's going on now. You're just still doing it. It's hard to give up. I know. It's hard to give up, but it's surprisingly easy once you make the decision. And so what's going to happen is when the going gets tough, you're stressed out, you're in traffic and someone yells at you, or you have an argument with your spouse, or something bad happens, then the temptation will be there to fly away. It's a flight response. It's an escape. You want to escape. You want to go off into this fantasy thing. And what you begin to do is accept that doing that is just like doing heroin. And just as you wouldn't suggest to somebody that they deal with their problems or their feelings of anxiety by going and doing heroin, you'd be like, yeah, it's going to be hard. You're going to feel withdrawal. You might need a lot of support for it, but it's going to be better on the other side. That's what it is with limerence. It's better on the other side. And so just as a heroin addict who's serious isn't going to be around people who use the drug, they're not going to be around the drug. If they catch themselves thinking about the drug, they'll stop thinking about the drug. They're not going to talk about it. They're not going to tell great stories about it. They're not going to write in their journal about it. They're going to put it down. And that's what we do with limerence. We put it down. Now, sometimes you can't help it. Something comes along. Maybe the person gets in touch with you. Maybe something reminds you of them. You hear music, you smell a smell or whatever, and it comes up and you're like, there it is. So one thing you can do, I have this thing called the daily practice, and the daily practice, twice a day when I'm writing my fears and resentments, I think about anything I want. I can think about cigarettes or limerence or anything I want, or how much I hate everybody. Things that I don't, they're not really good thoughts for me at all. And I get it out on paper, and then I'm done and I meditate, and it's gone. I don't mean to make light of it. I know, especially at first, it might be hard. And there's sometimes a painful reckoning. Because why we use fantasy and escape is because we don't want to deal with stuff that's hard. And then when you're finally sitting there with the stuff that's hard, it's kind of piled up and gotten rusty, and it's hot. It feels like a heap of problems. It feels like more than you can deal with. But that's why I say you need a good program. So I really encourage you to check out therapy, group therapy, 12-step groups, support groups, membership with me, anything where you can be with other women who are working on freeing their lives from the addiction to non-relationships. It sounds like you're somebody, like most of us, who would really, really like to have a happy love life, right? Who doesn't? Who doesn't want a happy love life? And a happy love life is absolutely poisoned by an attachment to a fantasy of somebody who's not in your life. It's just a very sad thing. So see what you think about that. You can watch further videos on my YouTube channel. Just search the word limerence in the search bar. You might find some more things that help you. And I've got a new PDF download. It's free. It's all about limerence. You can just click on it right here and you can have it in your hands in moments. And I'll see you very soon.